I didn't know what would break me first, the silence, the loneliness, or the crushing weight of my own mind. But here I was willingly stepping into a box, where time didn't matter and where light never dimmed. I wasn't just trying to survive a challenge, I was walking straight into a storm of my own making. 7 days completely alone in a white room with no sounds, no contact, no way to know what time it was or if the outside world was even real anymore. As the door shut behind me and the chains rattled like a final goodbye, I felt something shift inside me, not fear, not excitement, but something colder, something heavier, like a warning from deep within that this would not be like anything I'd faced before. I've spent days buried alive, I've survived on a raft in the middle of the ocean, but this was different. Those were physical tests. This was mental, and the mind has cracks you never see until it's too late. From the second the lock clicked, my world shrank too. White walls, a cold floor, and silence that didn't just surround me, it screamed at me louder than any crowd I'd ever heard. It was almost poetic. How something so quiet could be so deafening. I stood there alone, the cameras on me, watching every move but offering no comfort because they weren't people, they were glass eyes, and this place wasn't built for living. It was built to strip you down to your rawest self. I walked slowly, taking in every detail, like I was mapping the space that might become my prison, or worse, my grave. There was a bed, a notebook, a pen, a toothbrush, a sink, and a toilet, all sterile, all soulless, and somehow even these small things felt like echoes of a world I was no longer part of. The doctor outside had warned me anything over 50 hours in isolation could cause permanent damage to the mind, and I had signed up for 168. I didn't know if I was brave or just stupid, maybe both. Maybe that's what all my challenges are, a dance on the edge of sanity, pretending it's all for fun, when deep down, I'm testing who I really am, trying to find what's left when everything else is stripped away. The first few hours passed with a strange calm. I paced, I wrote a few things in the notebook, nothing profound, just scribbles, lines that didn't connect, thoughts that started and faded before they could become real. I kept telling myself this was just the beginning, just get through day 1, then day 2, then it would get easier. But the truth was, it never got easier, it just got quieter, and in that quiet, I started to hear things, not real sounds, not voices, but thoughts from the darker corners of my mind. At hour 9, I started counting the tiles on the wall, not because I needed to, but because I had to give my brain something to do, something to hold on to. There were 1,900 tiles, and if you included the floor and ceiling, it was 2,860. I repeated those numbers to myself, like a prayer, like they meant something, like they could protect me from the creeping madness, but they couldn't, because numbers don't talk back, numbers don't hug you, or laugh, or argue, they just sit there, cold and empty. And in this room, I was starting to feel the same, cold and empty. With a pulse, I waited for food. I waited longer than I thought I would, and hunger settled into my stomach like a heavy fog, not sharp, not painful, just constant, a dull ache that reminded me I was still alive, that my body still had needs, even if my mind was starting to unravel. The food came eventually, but I didn't hear it because this room was built to mute everything, even reality, and by the time I noticed it had arrived, it was cold, soggy, lifeless. But I ate it like it was a feast, because in that moment it was, and that scared me more than the hunger did, because if I could get excited over cold rice and dry meat, what would I be like in 3 more days? What would I become? The lights never changed. They were always on, always bright, always burning into my eyes, and my thoughts, they made sleep impossible. They made time meaningless, and without time, I started to float, not physically, but mentally, like I wasn't tethered to anything anymore. I laid on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondering if the world outside was still turning, if my friends were laughing, if my phone had notifications, if the sun had risen, or set, or even existed anymore. The doctor said my brain would start creating things if it didn't get input, and I thought he was exaggerating, but now I wasn't so sure, because I was beginning to see things, feel things that weren't there. I imagined walks in the park, I saw people fishing, I heard birds, even though I knew it was fake. I leaned into it because fake stimulation was better than none. I talked to myself, I counted rice grains on my plate, 447. I remember that number better than I remember my own address, because that number meant I was still here, still counting, still trying. But it didn't last, nothing did. The boredom came in waves, crashing down without mercy, and each wave took a little more of me with it. I stopped eating sometimes, not because I wasn't hungry, but because I didn't care. I didn't want to chew or taste or feel the texture of food that reminded me I was alone. I just wanted to sleep, but the lights wouldn't let me eat. Some point, I lost track of the days. I thought it was day 3, but it was still day 2. I had slept 5 times and pooped 5 times, and somehow that felt like science, like maybe I could calculate how far I'd come by tracking my most basic functions. But even that became unreliable, because sleep didn't mean night, and food didn't mean breakfast or dinner. It all blurred into a looping mess of nothing and everything. I missed my girlfriend, I missed the guys, I even missed Nolan. And I never say that out loud, but in here, every face, every voice, every laugh I'd ever heard became precious, more precious than I ever knew. I created games out of trash wrappers and toothbrush cups. I threw things I counted steps, I stared at the walls and pretended they moved. I counted laps 1, 2, 3, all the way to 1,000, and when that didn't help, I imagined myself in a world where this room didn't exist, but no matter how far I escaped in my mind, the walls were still there, always white, always watching. I tried to cry, but even my tears betrayed me, they wouldn't come, not because I wasn't sad, but because I was too sad, and I didn't know that was possible until now. Sometimes food would show up and I would just stare at it, wondering if it was a trick, if they were testing me to see how desperate I was, and I was desperate more than I'd ever been, but not for food, not for sleep, not even for light. I was desperate to hear another voice, even if it was yelling, even if it was arguing, anything to remind me that I wasn't the last person left in the world. I counted the minutes between meals, even though I didn't know how long a minute was anymore, and when I finally slept, I dreamed I was still in the room, which was somehow worse than being awake. At one point, they sent me SpaghettiOs with letters in them, and I ate them without realizing they were spelling something, maybe a message, maybe a joke, maybe a cry for help. I'll never know, because I chewed through the answer like it didn't matter, and maybe it didn't, maybe nothing did anymore. I had hit a place I never thought I'd reach, a place where existence was just passing time, a second at a time, trying not to break, trying not to scream, and wondering if I'd even know. If I did, my brain started playing tricks on me. I forgot what things were called. I stared at objects and knew they were familiar, but the names escaped me like my thoughts were slipping through cracks I didn't know I had, and when they brought me McDonald's, I smiled like a child. I ate like it was Christmas morning, and for 20 minutes, I was happy. Then it was over, and the silence came back, and the walls were closer, and my mind was smaller, and I didn't want to keep going, but I did, because I had to, because quitting would mean this pain was for nothing. I watched shadows move that weren't there. I talked to cameras like they were friends. I imagined voices behind the walls, cheering for me, crying for me, begging me to hold on, and I held on with every thread of sanity I had left, but it was fraying, it was tearing, and I could feel it happening. I told myself over and over, do not let me out, no matter what, no matter how much. I begged because I knew I would beg. I knew I would reach a point where all I wanted was for this to end, and when that moment came, I didn't want them to listen. I stared at the cameras and saw enemies, not eyes, not watchers, but jailers. I hated them, I loved them, I wanted them to talk to me, I wanted them to disappear, I wanted everything and nothing at once. And I didn't know what was real anymore, and maybe that's what this challenge was about, not surviving the room, but surviving yourself, and that's the hardest thing any human can do. I thought by now, I'd be used to the silence. But it was getting louder with every passing second. The walls weren't just white, they were alive. They pulsed, they breathed, or maybe I imagined that because my mind was bending, folding, twisting itself into something unrecognizable. I had stopped being me. I was just a body in a room, with no time, no purpose, and no end. I didn't know what hour it was. I didn't even know what day it was. All I knew was that something inside me was breaking, and I couldn't stop it. I had given everything to this challenge, but this room was taking more. It was taking my identity, my peace, my sense of reality, and I had nothing to replace it with. I started seeing myself from outside my body, like I was watching a movie of someone slowly dissolving into a shadow. The food didn't taste like anything anymore. The floor felt like it was swallowing me, the ceiling pressed down on me like it hated me, and the cameras watched like vultures circling something. Dying, I tried to sleep, but my dreams were louder than my thoughts, and when I was awake, my thoughts screamed like nightmares. Nothing made sense anymore, and I wasn't sure if I was awake or dreaming or something in between. At some point, I lost track of why I was even here. What was I proving? What did I think I'd learn? What kind of clarity was I chasing when all I felt was a storm inside me? I missed the sound of wind. I missed the random scroll through my phone. I missed mistakes. I missed noise. I missed being able to cry and have someone see it. I missed existing in a world where other people reminded me I was human, because in here, I didn't feel human anymore. I felt like an object, a test, a forgotten soul in a forgotten space. Began creating conversations in my head, full conversations with old friends, with strangers, with people who no longer existed, just to hear voices, even if they weren't real. I argued, I laughed, I apologized, and then I'd sit in silence wondering if I had said anything out loud, or if it had all stayed trapped inside where no one could ever hear it. I tried meditating, but all that did was magnify the thoughts I wanted to escape. So I started counting again, because numbers didn't ask questions. They just followed orders. 5,425, 5,426, over and over and over, as if I could measure my sanity by how high I could go before I collapsed. But no number could protect me from what was happening inside my mind. I began to forget what I looked like. I tried to picture my own face, and I couldn't remember the shape of my nose or the curve of my smile. I touched my skin to make sure I was still real, but it felt like someone else's hand, someone else's body, like I had traded places with a ghost. The lights were starting to buzz louder now, or maybe it was just my brain inventing the sound. The brightness was no longer just physical, it was emotional. It pierced me like guilt. Like shame, like regret, I wanted to turn them off, but I couldn't because this room wasn't mine. It was never mine. It belonged to the silence, to the emptiness, to the part of humanity that we pretend doesn't exist, the part where a man can be surrounded by everything and still have nothing, the part where being alone becomes a weapon. I tried to remember my purpose. I tried to remember my name, but everything felt distant, like I was reading about myself in a story written by someone else. Someone cruel, someone bored, someone curious. What happens when you trap a man in his own head for 7 days? I'll tell you what happens. He fractures, he questions, he imagines, he forgets, and then he begins to break. In ways no one can see. I stopped checking for food. I didn't care if I ate or not. Hunger didn't matter because I didn't know what full felt like anymore. My body was shrinking, but my thoughts were expanding in the worst way. I imagined cameras hidden in places they couldn't be. I imagined people laughing at me. I imagined the world moving on without me, and that hurt more than the hunger, more than the isolation, more than anything, because being forgotten is worse than being hated. I started to hear my heartbeat echoing through the floor. I thought I saw shadows move, even though there was nothing to cast them. I whispered to myself, not because I needed answers, but because I needed to remember what a voice sounded like, even if it was my own. I told myself stories, old memories, dreams, fears. I opened my notebook and wrote the same sentence 100 times. Let me out, let me out, let me out. And then I ripped the pages out and threw them at the walls, because I wanted the walls to listen, to scream, to respond. But they didn't. I spent what felt like hours curled up in the corner, not because I was tired, but because it felt safer than the middle of the room. I hugged myself, not for warmth, but to prove that I still could, and when I finally stood up, I felt dizzy, like gravity had changed, like my body had forgotten how to move. I walked in circles again, hundreds of circles, thousands of steps, and still I was nowhere, because this room was a trap, not of walls and lights, but of thought and silence and stillness. When they brought back the people I once trapped in my own challenge, I thought maybe I'd feel joy or laughter or something familiar, but all I felt was confusion and pain. I wanted to smile, but my face didn't remember how. I wanted to laugh, but it sounded hollow even to me, and when they pranked me with an empty food tray, it hurt more than it should have, not because of the prank, but because for a moment I remembered what it was like to be seen, to be part of something too. Matter. That memory faded quickly, and the silence came back sharper than ever. It felt like being buried alive. Not in dirt, but in thought, in regret, in doubt. I questioned everything, my choices, my channel, my existence. I didn't want to make videos. I didn't want to be anyone. I just wanted to be free. Not famous, not successful, just free. And then I realized maybe that's what this was really about. Finding out how much freedom means when everything else is taken away. The last day was the worst, not because it was hard, but because I thought it would never come. I had convinced myself they had forgotten I was in here, that the experiment had failed, and I was just going to rot away unnoticed. I watched the door and counted the hours, or what I thought were hours, and every second felt like a lie, like I was being punished for dreaming too big, for reaching too far. I talked to the floor, I sang to the ceiling, I begged the walls to show me mercy, and then I stopped, because even the begging felt useless. I curled up under the bed and waited, not for freedom, but for surrender. I wasn't MrBeast anymore. I wasn't Jimmy. I was a shell, and even if they opened the door, I didn't know what would be left to walk out. But then I heard it, a voice, not mine, a real voice, counting down 10, 9, 8, and I didn't believe it. I thought I was hallucinating, but the numbers kept coming, 7, 6, 5, and I stood up, not because I was ready, but because I couldn't stay down anymore. 4, 3, 2, and I looked around one last time, trying to burn this place into my memory, because I never wanted to forget what it took from me. And then the door opened. The light was different. It wasn't white, it wasn't artificial, it was warm, it was soft, and for the first time in what felt like years, I saw a face, not on a screen, not in my mind, but real, breathing, blinking, and smiling. I stepped out slowly, like a prisoner being released, not knowing if the world was real anymore. I felt air, I heard sound, I saw night, and it was beautiful. I didn't cry, but my heart did, my soul did, my entire being shook with the weight of freedom. They asked how I was, but I didn't have the words, because how do you explain what it feels like to come back from the edge? How do you explain what it's like to lose your mind and still keep walking? How do you describe the silence that screams louder than a stadium? All I could say was thank you, because I wasn't thanking them, I was thanking the universe that I made it out in. Maybe, just maybe, I'm stronger because of it, not because I survived, but because I saw what I was, without noise, without people, without purpose. And I kept going, I kept breathing, I kept counting. If you're watching this and you've ever felt alone, lost, broken, like you didn't matter, remember this: you do matter. Your mind is powerful, your presence is real, and no silence can erase your value. This wasn't just a challenge, this was a war inside myself, and I made it through. And if you're still here with me, if you felt even a fraction of this journey, if it made you think, if it made you feel, then do me one favor. Before you go, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone, because the hardest part of being human is remembering that you still are. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.